Hello, my name is Jessica, and I never imagined I would experience something that would change my life forever. But here I am, writing to you because I feel like I need to share what happened to me. I died. I crossed over, and what I saw on the other side was something I never expected. I met Jesus, and he showed me something about Black people that completely shocked me. It wasn't just a vision, it was a revelation. I'm still trying to process it all, but I know one thing. It needs to be told. It was an ordinary day, or so I thought. I woke up early, made my usual cup of coffee, and went about my morning routine like always. Nothing seemed out of place, but there was something different. I had no idea that in just a few hours, my entire life would take a turn I could never have imagined. I was driving to work, just like I did every weekday morning. The sky was overcast and the air felt thick, almost as if the world itself was trying to tell me something. But I wasn't paying attention. I was lost in my thoughts, thinking about bills, work, and all the things that had been stressing me out lately. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp pain shot through my chest, like nothing I had ever felt before. Intense, gripping, terrifying. I tried to breathe, but the air wasn't coming in. My vision blurred, and suddenly, everything around me seemed to slow down. The cars, the buildings, even the people on the sidewalk. It was like the world had gone into slow motion. I don't remember the exact moment I lost control of the car, but I do remember the sound of tires screeching and the sickening impact that followed. The next thing I knew, I was lying on the pavement, staring up at the sky. I could hear voices, sirens in the distance, people shouting, but none of it felt real. As I lay there, something strange happened. The pain started to fade, and I felt an overwhelming sense of calm. It was as if all the worries, the fears, the stress I had been carrying simply melted away. I wasn't scared anymore. I wasn't even sure if I was alive. That's when I realized I was dying. At first, I didn't know what was happening. One moment, I was lying on the pavement, feeling my body grow weaker, and the next, I was floating above it. I could see everything. The paramedics rushing to my side, a woman crying nearby, my own body, lifeless on the ground. But I didn't feel any attachment to it. There was no fear, no panic, just an odd sense of detachment, as if I were watching a movie. I tried to speak, to call out to the people below, but no sound came out. It was like I was weightless, drifting further and further away. Then I felt something pulling me. No, not physically, but spiritually. It was as if an invisible force was guiding me upward. I had no control over it, but I wasn't resisting either. I felt peaceful, more peaceful than I had ever felt in my life. A light appeared in the distance, small at first, then growing brighter and brighter. It wasn't like any light I had seen before. It wasn't harsh or blinding, but warm and inviting, like it was calling me home. I moved toward it effortlessly, as if I were being drawn in. The further I went, the more the world I had known faded away. The sounds of the city, the voices of people, it all disappeared. All that was left was the light and a sense of overwhelming love that wrapped around me like a blanket. Then, just as I was about to step fully into the light, I heard a voice. It wasn't loud, but it was powerful, resonating deep within my soul. "It's not your time yet." The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. Then, everything around me shifted, and I found myself standing in a place I couldn't describe. It wasn't Earth, but it wasn't completely foreign either. It was like a waiting area between two worlds. And that's when I saw him. The moment I stepped into the light, everything around me changed. I was no longer floating. I wasn't an observer anymore. I was there, in a place that felt both familiar and unknown at the same time. It was bright, but not in a way that hurt my eyes. The air was thick with warmth, but not the kind that made you sweat. It was comfort itself, a presence so strong and powerful that I could feel it wrapping around me like a soft embrace. Before me, a tunnel stretched far into the distance. It wasn't made of brick or stone, but of pure glowing light. It pulsed with life, almost like it was breathing. There was no doubt in my mind. I was crossing over. As I took a step forward, I noticed something incredible. The tunnel wasn't empty. On either side, shadowy figures stood watching me, their forms shimmering like waves of energy. I couldn't see their faces clearly, but I knew they were souls, people who had crossed over before me. Some felt familiar, like I had known them in another life, while others were complete strangers. They weren't speaking, but I could hear them, not with my ears, but with my spirit. They were welcoming me, comforting me, letting me know I was safe. It was the most beautiful feeling I had ever experienced. I continued forward, drawn deeper into the tunnel with every step. I felt lighter, as if all the burdens I had carried in my earthly life were falling away. Then, at the end of the tunnel, I saw him. Standing there was a figure unlike any I had ever seen before. He radiated light, not just around him, but from him. His presence was overwhelming. Love, peace, power, all wrapped into one. I knew, without a doubt, that I was standing before Jesus. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. All I could do was feel, and what I felt was beyond words. He looked at me, and in that single gaze, I saw my entire life flash before me. Every moment, every decision, every mistake, every act of kindness. It was all there, laid bare before him. But there was no judgment in his eyes, only understanding. Then he spoke, and his voice was like thunder and a whisper at the same time. "You are not here by accident, Jessica." I wanted to ask him why I was there, what was happening, but before I could, he raised his hand, and suddenly, everything changed. I was no longer standing in the tunnel. I was somewhere else, a place I had never seen before, but somehow, I felt deeply connected to it. And that's when he showed me the truth about Black people, a truth that would change the way I saw the world forever. I stood there, frozen in awe, as Jesus extended his hand toward me. His eyes held a depth of knowledge I couldn't comprehend. And in that moment, I knew I was about to see something important, something that had been hidden from the world for far too long. Without a word, everything around me shifted. The tunnel disappeared, and I was standing in a vast open space. It wasn't earth nor heaven, it was something in between, a place where divine truths were revealed before me. Images began to form, like moving paintings made of pure energy. The first thing I saw was Africa, vast, beautiful, and glowing with a golden light. I saw ancient cities, strong civilizations, and people full of wisdom, resilience, and spiritual power. They weren't broken, they weren't weak, they were chosen. Jesus spoke, and his voice resonated deep within my soul. "The world has lied about them," he said. "They are not what they have been made to believe. They were given gifts, power, and knowledge that many tried to erase." The vision shifted again. I saw chains, ships, and people being taken from their homeland. I saw suffering, pain, and generations being told they were less than what they were. And then I saw something even more shocking. I saw spiritual forces working behind the scenes, intentionally suppressing the truth. Jesus turned to me and continued, "The oppression was not just physical, it was spiritual, because if they knew who they truly were, the world would change." My heart pounded. This wasn't just history. This was a spiritual battle that had been going on for centuries. The deception ran deep, and most of the world had no idea. But then, the vision changed again. I saw modern times, people waking up, realizing their worth, reclaiming their power. The same people who had been told they were nothing were starting to remember who they truly were. Jesus smiled. "The time of revelation has begun. They will rise again." Tears filled my eyes. I had never felt something so profound. The truth had been hidden, but not forever. It was coming to light. The visions didn't stop. Jesus raised his hand again, and I was pulled deeper into the revelation. I saw a time long before slavery, before colonization, before oppression. I saw a world where Black people held spiritual knowledge that was powerful beyond words. They understood the connection between heaven and earth, between spirit and the physical world. They had divine wisdom that had been passed down from generation to generation. I saw prophets, leaders, and warriors, men and women who had direct communication with God. They didn't need intermediaries. They could speak to heaven themselves. Jesus looked at me, his expression filled with both sorrow and love. "This is why they were targeted," he said, "because those who rule the world fear those who carry divine wisdom." My mind was racing. It all made sense now. the attempts to strip away their culture, their faith, their identity. It wasn't just about control. It was about taking away their connection to the truth. But as I watched, I saw something incredible. Even through oppression, through generations of being told they were nothing, their spirit was never broken. Their power never left them. They carry something that cannot be destroyed. Jesus continued, and that is why they must remember. At that moment, I understood. It wasn't about hate. It wasn't about division. It was about restoration. The world had been built on lies, but the truth was rising. The vision changed again. This time I saw a great awakening. People of all nations, but especially Black people, standing up, realizing who they were. I saw them breaking free from mental chains, reclaiming their spiritual power. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. The world had tried to erase them, but they were stepping into the truth. And as they did, something miraculous happened. The world itself began to shift. Jesus turned to me once more. The prophecy is unfolding, he said. They will lead the world into a new era of spiritual awakening. I gasped. Was this why I was being shown this? Was I supposed to share this message? Yes, Jesus answered, reading my thoughts. You must tell them. The world is changing, and they need to know the truth. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by what I had just witnessed. It wasn't just about race. It was about identity, purpose, and destiny. This wasn't about one group being superior to another. It was about restoring balance, about unveiling the truth that had been hidden for centuries. They were chosen, Jesus said, but so were many others. It is time for all of my children to remember who they are. Suddenly, everything around me started to fade. The light, the visions, even Jesus himself. I felt myself being pulled backward, as if an invisible force was dragging me away from heaven. No, I cried out. I don't want to go back. Jesus smiled, but his eyes held something serious. You must, he said. The world needs you to speak. I wanted to protest, but before I could, I felt a jolt, like being hit with electricity. I gasped for air, my eyes flew open, and I was back. The beeping of hospital machines surrounded me. Nurses and doctors rushed to my side. I could feel my heart pounding, my lungs struggling to take in air. I was alive, but I was not the same person who had left. When I woke up in the hospital, everything felt different. The air felt heavier, the lights too bright, the voices around me too loud. I was alive, but I didn't feel like the same person who had left that day. The doctors and nurses were talking, but their voices sounded distant, like an echo of reality that I could barely grasp. My family was there too, crying, holding my hands, thanking God that I had survived. But I couldn't focus on any of it. My mind was still in that other place, still replaying everything I had seen. I had spoken to Jesus. I had seen the truth, and I knew my life would never be the same. When I woke up in that hospital room, everything felt like it was in a fog. The doctors and nurses were talking, but it was as if their words were muffled. My family was there too, crying, holding my hands, thanking God I had survived. But I couldn't focus on any of it. My mind was still stuck in that other world. I kept replaying everything I had witnessed. I had spoken to Jesus. I had been shown the truth, and I knew that my life would never be the same again. For days, I barely spoke. I could see the worry in my family's eyes, the way they whispered when they thought I wasn't listening. They thought I was in shock, that I was traumatized from the accident. And maybe I was, but not for the reason they thought. I was struggling with something much bigger than myself. How could I tell people what I had seen? Who would believe me? I tried to push it away, to convince myself it had just been a dream, a hallucination brought on by my near-death experience. But deep down, I knew better. It wasn't a dream. It was real. And the longer I stayed silent, the heavier it became. The weight of what I knew, of what I had been shown, pressed down on me like a force I couldn't escape. One night, unable to sleep, I found myself staring out the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. And that's when I heard the voice again, soft but undeniable. I turned sharply, but no one was there. Yet, deep in my soul, I knew what it meant. I couldn't keep this to myself. I had to tell people. But where would I even begin? The first revelation, the message, began to unfold. The first time I tried to talk about my experience, I was met with skepticism. I had gathered my closest friends and family, determined to share what I had seen, what Jesus had shown me about Black people and their hidden spiritual power. But the moment I started speaking, I could see the doubt in their eyes. "You were in an accident, Jessica," my sister said gently. "Maybe your mind was just—" "No," I interrupted. "It wasn't a dream. It wasn't my imagination. It was real," I went on, telling them everything. The tunnel, meeting Jesus, the revelation about Black people and their divine connection. I spoke with passion, with conviction, hoping that something in my words would reach them. But when I finished, there was only silence. Then my best friend cleared her throat and gave me a forced smile. "Well, that's interesting," she said hesitantly. "I mean, maybe it's symbolic. You know, maybe your mind was just processing everything that's happening in the world." I felt my heart sink. They didn't believe me. Not really. I tried again with others, church members, acquaintances, even strangers online. But time and time again, I was met with the same reactions. Some dismissed it as a hallucination. Others told me to keep it to myself. Some even got angry, saying I was trying to push an agenda. It was frustrating, painful. I had been given this message for a reason, yet no one wanted to hear it. Then, one night, as I sat alone, questioning whether I should just stop trying, I heard the voice again, "Keep speaking," and I knew I couldn't give up. The more I spoke, the more resistance I faced. It wasn't just skepticism anymore. Things started happening that I couldn't explain. My phone would randomly shut off when I was writing about my experience. Videos I recorded about my NDE would mysteriously get deleted. Strange calls from unknown numbers began flooding my phone, with voices on the other end, breathing heavily, but saying nothing. At first, I brushed it off as paranoia. But then, one night, something happened that I couldn't ignore. I had just finished recording a message about my experience, talking about how Black people had been spiritually oppressed for centuries. I was about to upload it when my computer screen flickered. Then the entire video vanished. Just like that. I tried to recover it, but it was gone. Nowhere to be found. Not in the recycle bin, not saved anywhere, just completely erased. A chill ran down my spine. I looked around my apartment, suddenly feeling like I wasn't alone. That's when I saw it. A shadow moving across my living room wall. I gasped and spun around, but there was no one there. "Keep speaking," the voice whispered again. But this time, it felt closer, almost urgent. I knew then that I was facing something bigger than I had realized. This wasn't just about me sharing a story. This was a spiritual battle. And whatever forces had been trying to keep this truth hidden, they weren't happy. I had a choice to make. I could stop. I could let the doubt, the fear, and the resistance silence me. I could pretend this never happened, go back to my normal life and never speak of it again. Or I could fight. I could keep sharing the message, no matter the cost, no matter who doubted me, no matter what tried to stop me. I thought back to that moment with Jesus, the way he had looked at me when he told me the truth about Black people. He had chosen me to see this for a reason, and if I turned away now, I would be turning away from him. So, I made my decision. I started writing, speaking, sharing my experience with anyone who would listen. I didn't care if people laughed. I didn't care if people doubted me. I didn't care if strange things kept happening around me, because I knew the truth. And the truth had to be told. So, if you're reading this right now, it means that despite everything, I've kept going. And I need you to do something for me. Share this message. Because this isn't just about me. It's about all of us. The world is waking up. The truth is being revealed. And it's time for everyone, especially Black people, to remember who they truly are. This is just the beginning. At first, it felt like I was screaming into the void. No matter how passionately I spoke, how deeply I believed in the message Jesus had shown me, people still refused to listen. But then, something changed. One day, I shared my testimony online, just as I had done many times before. But this time, it went viral. I don't know what was different about this particular post. Maybe it was the way I worded it. Maybe it was the growing spiritual unrest in the world. Or maybe, just maybe, it was finally time for the truth to be heard. Within hours, thousands of people were commenting, sharing, and engaging. Some people dismissed it, of course. Some called me crazy, a liar, or worse. But for every skeptic, there were 10 others who felt something stir deep inside them. "I don't know why, but your words resonate with me," one comment said. "I've always felt there was something missing in what we were taught. Tell me more." These were the messages I received, messages from people who were starting to wake up. And that's when I realized this wasn't about convincing the whole world at once. It was about planting seeds. Not everyone would believe immediately. Some would never believe at all. But those who were ready, they were listening. The revelation Jesus had shown me was no longer just my burden to carry. Others were feeling it, seeing it, recognizing the truth. And as more people started speaking out, something incredible happened. Connections began forming. Scholars, historians, spiritual leaders, even people who had never believed in God before, started coming together. The things I had seen in my vision, others had seen pieces of too. We had all been given fragments of the truth, and now we were putting them together. The more the message spread, the stronger the pushback became. It wasn't just people doubting me anymore. Something darker was fighting against me, against us. I started receiving threats, not just from random online trolls, but from people who seemed to know things about me, things they had no way of knowing. My emails were hacked, my videos were taken down, my posts would disappear without warning. One night, I received an anonymous message. "Stop speaking. This is bigger than you understand." Chills ran down my spine. I had read about spiritual warfare before, but now I was living it. The same way Black people had been spiritually oppressed for centuries, forces were now working overtime to silence the truth. It wasn't just history. It wasn't just injustice. This was a battle for souls, and it was happening right now. One night, I woke up to my apartment filled with the thickest darkness I had ever felt. It wasn't just the absence of light. It was something else. A presence. A force. Then, I saw it. A shadow standing at the foot of my bed. It didn't move. It didn't speak. But I could feel its intentions. It wanted me to stop. I wanted to scream, to run, but I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. And then I remembered Jesus. I forced my lips to move and whispered the only thing I could. "In the name of Jesus, leave." Instantly, the shadow vanished. The room felt lighter. The darkness broke. And that's when I understood. This wasn't just about spreading a message. It was about fighting for the souls of millions. After everything I had experienced, meeting Jesus, seeing the truth about Black people, and facing spiritual attacks, I thought I had seen it all. But I was wrong. One night, as I was deep in prayer, seeking guidance, something happened. I wasn't asleep, but I wasn't fully awake either. It was as if my spirit had been pulled into another realm, a place where time didn't exist. And in this place, I was shown the future. I saw a great awakening, but I also saw a great war. Not just a war between nations, but a spiritual war. The forces that had enslaved minds and spirits for centuries weren't going to give up easily. They were preparing to fight, and their weapons weren't bullets or bombs. They were lies, deception, and control. I saw people waking up to their power, stepping into their divine identity, and breaking free from generations of manipulation. I saw Black people, once broken and silenced, rising with an authority that shook the earth. They were reclaiming their knowledge, their spiritual gifts, and their connection to God. But I also saw the enemy striking back. Media, governments, and even some religious leaders would do everything in their power to keep the truth from spreading. They would create distractions, stir up division, and use fear to keep people in spiritual chains. Then, I saw something that made my heart stop. A wave of destruction unlike anything the world had ever seen. Floods, fires, and earthquakes in places that had never experienced them before. I saw cities falling, people running, the world crying out for help. I turned to Jesus, who was standing beside me, and asked, "Why is this happening?" He looked at me, his face filled with both sorrow and strength. "The world must be shaken before it can be restored," he said. Then he showed me something else. After the chaos, after the suffering, after the destruction, a new world began to emerge. A world where people were no longer enslaved by lies, a world where the truth about who they were could no longer be hidden. The final battle has begun, Jesus said, but victory belongs to those who walk in truth. Just like that, I was back in my room, gasping for air. My body was trembling, and my heart was racing. I had seen what was coming, and now I had no choice but to prepare. After that vision, I couldn't sit still. The weight of what I had seen was too much to ignore. The world was heading toward a spiritual war, and most people had no idea. They were still caught up in distractions, arguing about politics, chasing money, living in fear, while the real battle was happening in the unseen. I started speaking louder. I told people what I had seen, what Jesus had shown me. Some listened, many didn't. I realized something heartbreaking. Some people don't want to wake up. They're too comfortable in the lies, too afraid of what the truth will cost them. But whether they believe it or not, the time is coming. The awakening is happening, and every person will have to make a choice. Will you fight for the truth, or will you remain in the dark? Jesus warned me that not everyone will survive what's coming. Some will be consumed by fear. Some will give in to the lies. But those who stand in faith, those who embrace their divine power, they will rise like warriors. I don't know why Jesus chose me to deliver this message, but I know I can't stop now. The forces trying to silence me are growing stronger, but so is my faith. If you're reading this, know this isn't a coincidence. You were meant to hear this. You were meant to wake up, and now the choice is in your hands. I don't know how many more times I will be able to speak out before something tries to stop me again, but before I go, I need you to understand this. This isn't just my story. This is yours. The truth is coming to the surface, whether the world is ready or not. The spiritual battle is already happening, and you have a role to play. Maybe you've felt it. The feeling that something in the world is off, that you were made for something more. That's because you were. You are part of this awakening. But awakening isn't easy. It requires courage. It requires faith. It requires you to step out of fear and into your divine power. Jesus didn't show me these things so I could keep them to myself. He showed me so I could tell you. And now I am asking you, will you accept the truth, or will you turn away and pretend you never saw this? The world will try to distract you. The enemy will try to make you doubt. But deep down, your soul already knows the truth. This is your moment. Step into your power. Wake up. And when you do, help others wake up too. Because once the veil is lifted, there's no going back. The time is now. Choose wisely, for the truth will be revealed. It is not a matter of if, but when. It will come, and when it does, you will either stand with it or against it. The awakening has already begun. We are all called to play a part in it. The only question left is, will you answer the call? This is the moment we've been waiting for. This is the beginning of a new era.